Welcome back everyone. In today's video, I'm going to go over my top 10 list of videos on this channel for 2018. This is where I want to go over the 10 videos that I think are probably the most useful for you guys. Hopefully over the holidays you can check out some of the ones you may have missed. Without further ado, I'm going to move on to my list. So I did a video on how to get the perfect glue up. Now, I don't know if this was fully understood. I don't think it got as many views as I expected it to, and I'm kind of curious about that, but I think that after doing glue ups for over 25 years, I think at this point I have found the best way to get the most consistent and reliable glue up. I've tried gluing sideways, on flat surfaces, with bar clamps, with pipe clamps, with all kinds of different contraptions. I've used cauls, I've used a bunch of different methods for surface clamping and edge clamping. I've used biscuits, all of which work to some degree, but not as well as this. This is by far the best method that I've ever used. And if you missed this video, you're doing yourself a disservice, because this is by far the easiest way to get a consistent glue up and get a nice flat surface at the end of it with the minimum of cleanup. So if you haven't seen this video, you need to go check it out, because there's a lot of great tips in there. I use the panel clamps as the main clamping mechanism, and then I add on bar clamps afterwards to do the supplementary edge clamping. Some people dismiss panel clamps based on the name. I guess the name would imply that you're gluing thinner pieces of wood or panels, as it were. Nothing can be further from the truth. These actually can handle up to 3-inch thickness, which means you can use them for anything up to about a butcher's block size pretty reliably. So go check it out. Dowel joinery. Specifically the dowel jig that I made in 2018, and I put a video out on it. This jig gives you the best results in terms of consistent alignment. It's simple to build. You can add metal piping to it and make it a little hardier. I compared different systems for dowel joinery, and I have to say this is still the one I come back to as one of the most reliable if you're trying to join two pieces together and line them up perfectly. There are a number of different dowel systems out there that you can spend money on. Using a simple jig like this one gets me the best results. So go check out this video if you haven't seen this one yet. And if you've got a hand drill, you can do really great dowel joinery. So go check out this video. So my freestanding box joint jig, as I call it, does not require a router table. It only requires a compact handheld router. And if you want the best results, use a carbide spiral upcut bit. That will give you a nice clean cut. But you can use any straight bit with this jig, and it works on the same principle as the classic router table jig. I've got two videos on this one actually. So I've got the static version, which is just a one size jig. So if you're using 3/4 inch, for example, it will be a jig that only works for 3/4 inch. But I've also got an adjustable version that can adjust for different thicknesses. The advantage over the router table jig is that you can use this jig on almost any length of board and get consistent results. So I think this is a really great box joint jig. I got a lot of great feedback on this one. If you haven't seen this one, you should go check it out. Now this video was called Don't Cut That End Grain, which probably was a poor choice of title because there are so many other things involved in this video. Really what the video is about is a loose joinery system, and it was sort of a retake on doing loose tenon joinery that I did in a previous video. This one is the one I'm putting forward as one of my favorites because it is a complete video with a complete set of jigs that will help you do this safely and effectively. The biggest concern, of course, that people had with cutting loose tenon or doing loose tenon joinery, particularly when cutting end grain, is running the end grain through the router table on the slot cutter. For me, I've been doing it for years and years, and generally if I want to make it safer, I just take a block of wood and push it through so my hand isn't close to it. But I developed a jig that makes it even a little bit safer and prevents anything from flipping up and, you know, flying out at you. There's a lot of unpredictable factors when it comes to routers, so I'm trying to reduce that risk in this video as much as possible. But go check this video out. It is a complete system on how to cut your mortises and to make your own loose tenons very quickly and easily. My cross-cut sled, also known as a bridle joint jig, also known as a tenoning jig, also known as, it does a whole bunch of cool stuff. It's not your run-of-the-mill cross-cut sled. It's a smaller version of what you normally see. This has greater stability because it straddles the fence on your table saw as well as moves through the track on your table saw surface. It gives you a perfectly square cut every time. The adjustable stop block system allows you to do different sizes of cuts. It's not really meant for a lot of big wide boards, but it's meant for some finer work. If you're doing some joinery, mortise and tenoning, bridle joints are really fast to do on this jig. Originally I had a different title on it, and now it's really just a really cool cross-cut sled. I encourage you to check out the video on this. Some people kind of miss the point of it. This is one of the coolest jigs that I built this year, if you can call it a jig. Really, it's just a tool for my workshop and my table saw. The folding sawhorses. Now, I know sawhorses are, you know, they're falling out of the sky on YouTube. There's so many people that have sawhorse videos on YouTube, and I really debated whether I should put another video into the pool on sawhorses. But one thing I thought was missing from the selection of sawhorse videos is a really good video on how to build folding sawhorses. The sawhorses in my shop have to be folding sawhorses. There's no question. I cannot build full-size stackable sawhorses. I don't have room to store them. Being able to fold up the sawhorses and stack them away somewhere in a shed or up in a set of rafters or in a crawl space is essential for me in my workshop. Sawhorses are invaluable, and I built 2 sets of them. I might build another 2 sets next summer because they're so great to have around, and I can have multiple projects on the go. You could definitely build a number of these and stack them away and take up hardly any space at all. So go check out the video on how to build these. I haven't seen a lot of great videos on folding sawhorses myself. So number 7, we have the Dovetail Jigs. My General Tools Dovetail Jig is not a jig that I made, obviously. It's one I purchased. But I recently did a video on how to use it because I realized there weren't a lot of great videos on how to use this jig on YouTube. There were a few demo videos. There were some product videos from General Tools, but none of them actually went into any real detail on how to use this jig. And I wanted to go over my experience with using this jig. Hopefully the information that I put in that video was helpful to you if you own that jig or if you're thinking of buying a dovetail jig. This is one of those things where when I'm doing dovetails, I've always been able to use this jig reliably and get consistent results. And that's what I look for, whether it's a jig that I'm building or whether it's a jig that I'm purchasing. I did a video on how to turn your hand planer into a jointer for only $10. And there was no word of a lie in that. It was actually all scrap material. 2 small pieces of angle iron was all it took to actually put this together. Some leftover hardware that I had in the shop. The only component I had to go out and buy was a small power bar, which was really cheap. It was $6. I've owned that electric hand planer for about 6 or 7 years now, and I've never used it more than when I built this jig. I got a lot of really great comments and a lot of support around this one. You know, do be careful. It doesn't have the safety features of a jointer. Use push sticks or use push blocks when you're using it. A number of viewers also suggested in-feed, out-feed. So if you want to build little platforms or a little table to nest it in, you can do that and you get an effective in-feed, out-feed so you can prevent snipe on longer boards. My mortising jig, my self-centering mortising jig was also a really big hit, and recently I put that video out. This was a really cheap jig to build. It makes cutting mortises a breeze. It makes centering your mortises a breeze. If you wanted to create your own loose tenon and mortising system, this is the first big step. Is using this self-centering jig to get your mortises cut and centered properly. A lot of people were happy with this. This is something they've been looking for. You know, if you have a plunge router, which is something you definitely should have in your shop, if you're a woodworker, a plunge router I think is essential, especially if you're a power tool shop. In other videos, sort of as a supplement, sort of as a 9.5, I also showed how to use the same jig to do dowel joinery, so it has a dual benefit if you go check out both of those videos. I will include that video as well as an auxiliary video in my description. Last but not least, I put out a video on how to make your own T-tracks. That was the video I put out actually last week. A lot of people don't really see the value in T-tracks until they start to build jigs, and then they realize, wow, if I had a T-track, this would be so much easier. I could make variable clamping systems, I can make all kinds of different rigs for different operations. You know, you start to get so many ideas once you start using T-tracks. In this video, I use my own T-tracks to build a sacrificial crosscut fence. As I build other jigs and make other improvements around the workshop, you are definitely going to see me make more of my own T-tracks. When you can just cut a T-slot into a nice sturdy piece of 3/4 inch plywood, the possibilities are endless. So this was a great video to put out there, and I hope it sparked some ideas. In terms of what you can do, you can make some really cool extrusions and grid systems. Almost anything you want, from a drill press table to a miter fence to table saw fences. The possibilities are only limited by your imagination. When you can make something like this yourself, you save a ton of money. Well, that concludes my top 10 list for 2018 on this channel of videos you should definitely watch. All of the videos I just mentioned are linked in the description below, so it's easy to go check them out. I'm gonna do at least one more video this year for 2018, and then we're gonna move into a new and exciting 2019. The only thing that's probably missing from your workshop now is a good woodworking t-shirt. So go check out my t-shirt shop in the description below. If you wanna buy me a beer, and just because it's the holidays, maybe you wanna buy me 2 beer, go check out my Patreon page right here. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. There are a couple more videos you can check out on this side. Until next time, thanks for watching and have a great day.